My name is Liza, and I wrote my first poem about 14 years ago when I was 17. Looking back on it, I think that poetry came to me out of a necessity, as a tool for coping with my insecurities and feelings of worthlessness. Writing poetry helped me reassure myself and others that I matter. And I think that to this day, I sometimes use creativity for that purpose. Creating something makes me feel valuable and important. After writing that first poem years ago, I began writing consistently for the next few years, and I loved it so much to the point where I decided to study literature in university as a part of my bachelor's degree. I enrolled in university, moved to a new city. I was meeting new people, became a flight attendant, and I started moving away from writing. I haven't written anything for about 6 years until 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit and I was sent on a 1-leave year of absence from my flight attendant job. At first, it was nice to have a break from flying, but then the stress and frustration started to get the best of me. I deleted my Instagram account and my flight attendant YouTube channel because the intrusive and anxious thoughts that I was having influenced me. I couldn't handle the person I was presenting to the world anymore, online and offline. Before that, I haven't given much thought to the way I was presenting myself to the world and frankly to myself, until I had so much time on my hands that thinking was all I did. I was overwhelmed by the realizations I've made about myself, and I didn't know how to handle them. I knew that I always seemed like a happy, positive, and optimistic person, but in reality, I had other sides that I was not willing to accept or disclose. I thought I was an open person, but really, I was subconsciously curating very carefully what parts of myself I was sharing with the world. I was scared that if I seemed anything less than perfect, no one would love me. I was scared of negative feelings such as anger, disappointment, fear, sadness, guilt, shame, and I was trying to suppress them each time they showed up in me or in other people. But all these feelings rushed to the surface in this time of collective stress and uncertainty, and it was a new territory for me, or at least one I haven't walked on in a really long time. I realized that I wasn't admitting to myself that these feelings lived within me and that I had to accept them as a part of life and who I am. I've never given myself the time and space to process difficult things that I went through. Instead, I brushed them off with a smile. But once I started to acknowledge the real ways I was feeling, everything changed. And once that gate was open, there was no closing it. I had gained weight during the pandemic, and I had to deal with my relationship with food, which was always unhealthy, but I didn't see it. I had to start thinking about my disordered eating and the roots of it and how to overcome it. I also developed anxious thoughts and emotions that caused me eventually to quit my flight attendant job. My mind wandered to old places it hasn't visited in a long time, but also to new places that I haven't been to before. I started to feel disconnected, and I didn't know who I was anymore. I felt like I was floating in space, but more like floating in my bedroom, because that's where I spend most of my time during lockdown. I started to feel worthless again. My insecurities peaked to the point where it was hard for me to go outside. And so again, just like 14 years ago, poetry came to me. Faster, stronger, and more authentic. I started waking up in the middle of the night and scribbling words and sentences that were flowing through me like rivers. The stillness of my outer life allowed poetry to attack me from within, and I found that I was willing to give in. I was attacked by my internal world, a world that I was suppressing for a really long time. And I think that this is one of the reasons why I stopped writing. I was disconnected from my true self, and I didn't know it. But my poetry did. It was waiting for me to come back. And this time, poetry also helped me to make sense of what I was going through. It helped me navigate my thoughts and feelings by giving them a voice and made them less mysterious and scary. I also want to say that it's not that my life was a lie. It really wasn't. I am the person I portrayed myself to be, but also a lot of other things, and not all of them are pleasant or shiny, and I had to accept that that's okay. I'm still trying to accept that. In the past, I've failed to comprehend and make peace of the dichotomies inside me, but now I'm determined to embrace all my contradictions with compassion and pride. There is a quote by Parker Palmer that says, "Wholeness does not mean perfection. It means embracing brokenness as an integral part of life." One of the poems I wrote in 2020's lockdown is called Eat It. Eat It was supposedly the name of Lot's wife from the Bible, who became a pillar of salt when she turned around and looked at the destruction of Sodom. Years ago, I was working at a hotel in the Dead Sea, and on my way to work, I would always see what was believed to be the pillar of Lot's wife on the hill. Right before writing this poem, I read an article that debunked this belief. And it made me think about the symbolism of the story we're telling, and about the fact that she was the only one brave enough to look and deal with the destruction and pain. She looked at the trauma, and she was punished. Why? Reading that article made me want to tell the story in a different way, that she did not turn to salt. Maybe the way I thought about myself and constructed my identity is a part of a bigger problem, a society that worships perfection and tries to hide the dirt, a society that many times labels artists as unstable and sad. And because I didn't feel comfortable with being a part of that narrative, I moved away from writing. I ran away from artists. I turned to stone when I looked back. I took it upon myself to be that, a wife of birthday parties, a statue of a fairy, only to stand one day with David as proof of me. My words were off the record, but not anymore. My stone is crumbling. I knew they'd come for me, shoving flowers up my nose, taking everything they've lost. I've seen Eat It on my way to work, and now they say it wasn't her. The thing is, she turned around, but she never turned to salt. Even though the beginning of COVID was a difficult time for me, I'm thankful it brought me back to poetry. It brought poetry back to me and helped me reconnect with myself and also realize new things about myself that I'm trying to explore. I also remembered that I write because I truly love the world, and I really believe that our society is moving in the right direction when it comes to talking about unpleasant things like mental health and eating disorders. When I was growing up, nobody talked about it. But just like our society, I still have a long way to go, but I'm starting to accept myself, all of me, slowly, step by step, poem by poem.